Hello folks, I'm John and welcome to Totally IFE, the most IFE-based podcast in IFEdom.
Just joking, folks. It's Totally Tanked, and this is episode 69. Stop sniggering, you lot, and recording on and streaming live on 12th of April 2025.
So the subject of this episode is the American M2/M3 Bradley, and despite it being officially not a tank, we're going to make the case as to why we're taking a look at it. Also because we've done First World War armour that wouldn't qualify as tanks today, and we've done Bren gun carriers, or universal carriers, and S tanks and British CVRTs and CV90. So having done all of those other vehicles, Bradley is definitely close enough to a tank for us to talk about. Also, a real tank killer. Now, quickly, folks on the line, we've got Alan Desmond, old friend of the show. Good to see you, being very rude about New Zealand Navy captains. We will let that go. We're not doing Totally Sanked. Hans Vormhat, I hope you're still with us. He appears to have logged in early. Tasman from Sydney. Jussi from Finland.
Greetings.
Cat Chant from Montana. I am drinking Moostrel from Missoula, Montana, I believe. So, what was it, Missouri? No, Montana. It's from Montana, yes. Okay, Cat Chant, we're drinking your stuff. And Raghav appears to be with us mentioning CV90. Jonas from Portland, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Now, quickly, the beer tower is not here because Brandon Makes Stuff has sent us another shipment of beer, worried about Rob's beer choices again.
I still haven't...
Yes.
Still hadn't drank the one from last time,
no,
so
now
we are going to do today.
Okay, now I've just got a confession to make. He did send us a 6-pack of Moostrel. I could have put it in the beer tower, but I didn't think about it. And then a friend of mine has been trying to homebrew clones of Moostrel for years, but he's never actually tasted Moostrel. So last night I said, do you want to come round and have some Moostrel? And we had a couple of them, but we've got some left, which we're going with now. So apologies to Brandon for preempting a bit of your beer shipment.
Anyway,
we've got lots more to go.
We do. Alexander Vlad from Ottawa is also here. And now, John, you're saying not least because the US Army is not the boss of us?
Well, it's not the boss of us until the third Trump term anyway, when the invasion happens, but yes. Before we get on with the show, we're declaring independence from social media, and yeah, I know that's hilarious to say on a YouTube live stream. We have our own website now, Rob.
TotallyTanked.net.
TotallyTanked.net. So instead of saying go to Redbubble and go to Patreon, and just TotallyTanked.net, it's got the links to everything you need there. All the episodes are up there if you want to go back through those. So please do visit Totally.Tanked.net. Set yourself up for the mailing list or the RSS feed so that when we've got things to talk to you about, it'll guaranteed that it'll get to you instead of a billionaire's social media algorithm deciding. It's really sad that internet communities have flourished in the last 15 years on social media, but these communities they're too important to trust the whims of social media owners. So if you want to stay with us, no matter what happens in an increasingly uncertain future, head over to TotallyTanked.net and sign up for the email list or subscribe to the RSS feed. And
because they can't stop RSS.
It's
harder.
We're hosted on Squarespace.
Cory Doctorow says use RSS.
Yeah, but we are using Squarespace to host, and that's an American company, so it could get cut off. But hopefully, we'll be able to let you know where to find us in the eventuality that happens. But yeah, the nerd tools of 2005 are that's where we're going back to, folks. So yes, and also if you like the show, for God's sake, smash those like and subscribe buttons and leave positive reviews on whatever platform you are listening to us on.
7 stars, boys and girls. All right, now we're talking about the Bradley, the M2 Bradley Infantry Fighting Vehicle, or the M3 Bradley Cavalry Fighting Vehicle, both of which are armoured fighting vehicles, but not an armoured personnel carrier, even though they carry personnel in an armoured vehicle. Plus, let's enjoy the game of the M2 M3 game, this time with 2 of them named Bradley. So we've already got the M2 Bradley Infantry Fighting Vehicle, IFV, and the M3 Bradley Cavalry Fighting Vehicle, CFV. Then there's the M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun, Mardus, which becomes the M3 50 caliber machine gun with a heavier barrel, allowing a 50% increase in firing rate because it goes from 2 to 3. Then there was the M2 half-track car as a recon and artillery tractor, half-track, which formed the basis of the heavier bodied M3 half-track, for use with mechanized infantry and anything else needing a truck that could move off-road. Then there was the M2 backpack flamethrower, but no M3 flamethrower. That'd be a fun thing to have, wouldn't it? An M2 backpack flamethrower. Then there was the M2 light tank and the M3 light tank at the same time as having the M2 medium tank and the M3 medium tank, any of which could be fitted with the M2 and M3 75mm tank guns, but not the M2 or M3 90mm anti-aircraft gun. And then there was the M2 carbine, which was allowed a full auto fire version of the M1 carbine, which could become the M3 carbine with a sniper scope or a night sight.
And he's not finished yet. Here we go. Keep going, Rob. Keep going.
The M2 Hyde submachine gun was a replacement for the M1 Thompson, but failed, and the production then changed to the John's broken something.
Oh, yep, I've done it.
Broken it to the M3 submachine gun, which became what became known as the grease gun. Then there was the there's another M2 in there. There was a M2 Scout car, which became the M3 Scout car. Almost there. In the 1930s, there was the M2 Scout car, which was then upgraded to the M2A1 version, which was then renamed as the M3 Scout car. And I'm sure there are others out there, and anyone is begging the US Army to learn that there are other letters in the alphabet and other numbers besides M, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Let's move on.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, actually, that's good. Pass me the M2. Which one? That was, I think that was a Squire video, wasn't it? That he did a little while ago. Anyway, stats.
I think the Chieftain's done that joke too. But yes. Anyway, it's a good joke. We're going to keep using it.
I'm going to pour myself some Mistral.
Right, some Mistral for Rob.
It's a brown ale, 5%.
I would also add the poll. The poll's very important. So it's currently running, and we have how many votes? 9 votes. Very good.
Oh, very, very tank-like. The numbers have been changing.
Yeah, the numbers have switched. So 44% currently saying the Bradley is not a tank, and 56% saying it is very tank-like. I want to throw an extra caveat in there. The M3, which only carries 2 dismounts and lots more tow missiles, is much more tank-like. And when we're just saying Bradley in general, I think that still needs consideration.
All right.
But yeah.
All right, stats, type, take your pick, armoured fighting vehicle, infantry fighting vehicle, cavalry fighting vehicle. But remember, it's not a battle taxi, it's a battle wagon, but only carries 6 boys rather than 20. I did think about bringing over one
of
my
Warhammer joke.
Yeah, one of my old Orky battle wagons, but that are made out of a dump truck and put razor blades and all sorts of fun stuff and hung the boys off the side of it, but did not. All right, place of origin, United States, in service, 1981 till today. Designed from 1963 till 1981. And won't we
that is a very long development process.
Won't we have fun talking about that?
I do love, because everyone talks about how the Soviet BMP was the first infantry fighting vehicle. That didn't come into service until 1966, and the West only found out about a year later. So Bradley started development before anyone was aware of the BMP. They might have been aware of some things with BMP development, but it's they kind of missed a march. They started on the process of IFVs and then got very confused about what they were trying to achieve, and hilarity ensued.
And hello to Catchant and Jonas Golden joining us as well. Pentagon Wars, anyone? Yes, so we'll get there. Too far. Go back up. All right. Built from 1981 to 1995. They've supposedly built 6,724. They've still got 2,500 in service and 2,800 in storage, able to bring them out at a little bit of a moment's notice. Started out at 30 tons and now up to around 45 tons with all the bits and pieces and new kit and engines and armour and busks and tusks and all sorts of other stuff. 21.5 feet long, 12 feet wide, and 9.8 feet high. Crew 3 plus variable number of passengers depending on the variant. So you have 3 for the cavalry fighting vehicle, or 6 for the infantry fighting vehicle. Then it went to 7. Then it went back to 6, and I think it's staying at 6 for the moment. Armour, aluminum. I'm going to say that for the American viewers because in Australia we'd say aluminium. But anyway, I'm going to keep saying aluminum and steel for protection. Starting against 14.5mm guns, and then moving up to protection against 30mm autocannons.
Plus, you've got the Brats, the Bradley reactive armour tiles.
And the Busk, the Bradley Urban Survival Kit.
So there's some notes in there. Pentagon Wars is in fact about the Bradley. Alexander Vlad's having a joke there because the Constellation class has just been announced. Even though they're building the first one for the last 2 years, they haven't finalised the design yet. It's still many years away from completion. Constellation class, there'll be a whole movie of its own about.
All right, main armament, 25mm M242 Bushmaster chain gun, can fire a single shot, 100 rounds a minute or 200 rounds a minute. So very single shot, semi-auto,
Now it's
slow or fast fire.
I just want to quickly note that it's got the armor piercing round with a discarding sabot round, which does mean that you've got to be very careful how you position your vehicle in relation to your infantry, because if your infantry are downrange of your vehicle, then your discarding sabots will start cleaning up your dismounts. So that's something that a lot of people don't think about with their IFVs, but yes.
Also a good idea for why it is good to have such a tall vehicle, because you shoot over the heads of you.
Yeah,
but they wouldn't happy about it.
The discarding sabots peeling off are problematic, but yeah.
Anyway, it's also got two 71 BGM 71 TOW anti-tank missiles.
Oh, you call it TOW?
Oh, TOW.
Yeah, that's. I've never seen a satisfactory resolution of the TOW v TOW
Let's do
argument.
both. We'll do it. I'll alternate between, as I'm saying, just to annoy people.
Yeah, we will have to talk about the TOW missile more as we go on, because it's quite an interesting story of its own. It is the main armament for anti-tank work on this vehicle.
Yep. Yeah. Secondary armaments, your 762 M240 machine gun, which is the US version of the Mag 58. Engine, Cummins diesel, 600 horsepower, then upgraded to a 675 horsepower engine.
I thought the first one was 500.
Yeah, sorry, it does. Yeah. The first one does start out as 500 and then goes 600. Now it's up to 675.
I mean, 500 horsepower for even as it was designed, 30-ton vehicle it's getting a little on the anemic side. The Russians were putting 500 horsepower engines in their tanks in 1941, but yeah.
All right, operation range, about 250 miles. Maximum speed started out at 45 miles per hour, but lost a bit of zip when they added weight, and then they put it in a bigger engine, so it gained a bit of zip. So the main thing is it's all designed around being able to keep up with the Abrams, which is slightly faster still. So they say, yeah, close enough is good enough for.
Well, it started not quite good enough, and it's gotten significantly worse as time has gone on. But fundamentally, Abrams don't normally zoom around at 60 miles an hour anyway. So, no. Yeah.
All right, design and development. Now, we're assuming everyone has done their homework and watched Pentagon Wars prior to this episode. It's available on YouTube. If not, make sure you watch it afterwards, as we found it really funny and really enjoyed it as a depiction of military design, development, and procurement. Yes, there are many inaccuracies and lies, but you cannot let details get in the way of a good story about spending billions of dollars and 17 years to build a military land vehicle. As they quote from the movie, a troop transport that can't carry troops, a reconnaissance vehicle that's too conspicuous to do reconnaissance, and a quasi-tank that has less armour than a snowblower, but carries enough ammo to take out half of DC.
Look, the movie is, truthy, as Stephen Colbert would say, and it does show the development chaos of the Bradley, which is very real, with every general and congressman throwing design concepts at it. Partly because no one really understood what an IFV was meant to do, and the US didn't have anything to point to and say that that's what it's meant to be, unless there were, World War II German designs were long in the tooth by then. But that said, Colonel Burton was downright wrong with his criticisms of Aberdeen Proving Ground. He wanted to hit prototype Bradleys with weapons that they already knew would destroy them, and that wasn't going to be a good use of time or money.
His plan was to use about 100 Bradleys to test it out.
Yeah, whereas Aberdeen was like, we already know it's going to go straight through that, so what's the point in hitting it something we already know is going to destroy it? And in general, the so-called reformers, and that was in the title of Burton's book, reformers, they've mostly been proven wrong with the march of time, which is not to say military procurement could not be improved. It most definitely can.
17 years and billions of dollars before they've even built any of them.
Yeah, and it often represents a crime based against the taxpayers and the service personnel whose lives and healths are lost with knowingly shoddy equipment for improved shareholder value. But the argument of the reformers about the need to make simpler and lightweight systems, largely the increased complexity of particularly American systems, has proven itself in combat in the intervening years to be well worthwhile.
Yes, and Tasman, we are on. Hopefully everybody's realised that we've got daylight savings has just finished here in Australia, so our timings are different, and we might have people joining us now. Or
we did try to warn people on social media and the like that the time zones had changed, so sorry for anyone who's missed or come on early. I would say that YouTube will tell you that the pretty much correct time it's going to start, so pay attention to that. when it works.
All right,
Yay.
so we start the 17-year journey of the Bradley design. With the M113 already designed and on the way to testing in 1958, the Army started thinking about what comes next and thought they needed a vehicle able to carry troops, continue fighting in a nuclear wasteland with mounted troops shooting from the inside with a 20 millimeter gun for more DACA and weighing 8 tons. That's what they were wanting. In 1963, there was more navel gazing about the post-1965 infantry combat vehicle, which would later be called the Mechanized Infantry Combat Vehicle, or MICV. They tried out some modifications to the M113 by installing firing ports and adding a cupola with a 20mm autocannon, or twin 50 cals, and sent them for testing in Vietnam from 67 to 72. It was liked by the crews, but the M113 was a battle taxi and not a battle wagon.
So just to clarify there, the issue is that with something like an M113, you will take the troops up to close to the point of contact with the enemy, but not all the way to the point of contact. Whereas with the infantry fighting vehicle concept, you will take the troops all the way to the objective and then they will dismount on the objective.
You can call your artillery into an objective to a certain distance if your troops that you are advancing on that position are within M113s, and so basically they can drive up closer to where the artillery is firing before the artillery has to stop. So once the artillery stops, then the troops get out and they have less distance to go on foot to clear the position. All right,
and it's particularly as the battlefields become more and more lethal in the intervening period, the battle taxi concept is becoming less and less viable. Your troops need to spend minimal periods of time out of cover. Yeah.
And Vietnam also showed how vulnerable the M113s were to RPGs. At the same time, the Army was in a joint project with West Germany on the MBT-70 for the replacement of the M60 MBT, and was looking at a companion project for the MICV. The XM70 prototype was built in 1965 that included a two-man turret with a 20mm gun, aluminum or steel armour, carried 9 troops with firing ports, amphibious, overpressure environment, which is for your NBC, and a built-in toilet at 27 tons.
Can you imagine how unpopular you'd be trying to use the toilet in an APC?
Infantry are different breeds of people. But it couldn't keep up with the speed being designed for the MBT-70, and it couldn't be carried in a C-141 Starlifter, and so got cancelled, and new requirements written in 1965. Then in 1967, the West found out about the Soviet BMP-1, able to carry 8 troops with a 73mm gun and an ATGM, amphibious, and speeds up to 65 kilometres an hour.
Now, it should be noted, they did that by providing no armour at all.
But the West said, we need something better than that. And eventually in 1968, they reopened the MICV project. So once again, they looked at upgrading the M113 as the XM765 with firing ports, 25mm gun in a one-man turret, additional steel armour. It was rejected as once again it couldn't keep up with the design of the MBT-70. The MBT-70 was then cancelled in 1971, once again signalling the end of tank collaboration designs. Don't worry, one day we'll look at the MBT-70 and maybe we'll put together all the cancelled collaboration designs then figure out what the common factors are. Psst. It appears to be the Germans, and surprisingly, not the French.
Now, just quickly, I want to say hello to Obliteron, who's joined us from Oregon. And Hans has made it. Good stuff.
Good idea. Then the West German Marder was considered as a replacement, but were rejected as being too expensive, not amphibious, and too heavy for air transport. Then they put forward the XM723 in 1973, or a one-man turret with commander in the hull alongside 8 infantry, a 20mm gun, firing ports, aluminum armour, and amphibious. When the XM800 armoured reconnaissance scout vehicle (ARV) for the cavalry was cancelled in 1974, the requirements were then rolled into the XM723 design, leading to a 2-man turret with a 25mm Bushmaster, a tow missile ATGM, as the world had learned how effective the ATGMs were in 1973 during the Yom Kippur War. So they wanted to make sure that we had one as well.
I just want to quickly touch here on the tow missile. Is interesting in that it's gone on for a very long service life, because even though it's got huge design flaws, it works quite well and delivers a very powerful missile where it needs to go.
And you just got to you can upgrade the missile, but the tube's just going to stay the same.
Yeah. Now, and one thing that its users love is it gives an infantry platoon quite good reconnaissance capabilities, because they can look through the launcher's sights and see all sorts of things at great distances. So that's good. The serious flaw, though, is that the gunner has to keep the crosshairs on the target for the entire duration of flight, which can be up to 20 seconds. and the enemies of this vehicle know this very well. So if someone shoots a tow missile at you, you will try and get your cannon right on where it came from and blat it back. And a tank cannon with the velocities that they fire at can easily neutralize a tow missile launcher if they can fire their counter round fast enough. And that 20 seconds with the crosshairs on will seem like a lifetime. In the 70s, the Americans went to the British and said, hey, why are you messing around with this swing fire missile of yours? Why don't you use our brilliant tow missile? And the British said, well, because ours, we can fire from a dismounted position with the launcher in cover, and the enemy having no capacity to know where the targeter is positioned. So we like ours a lot more. Now, the other thing is, for most of its life, it was a wire-guided missile, and I know in Ukraine everyone's going back to wire guidance because it's
trees,
not jammable.
And trees get in the way of wire-guided. Whereas tank rounds don't get stopped by trees.
Yeah, but anyway, the point is the tow in its later configurations doesn't have wire guidance. They've made it wireless, but it does still require the targeting machine to be able to see the exhaust port of the missile. It's not actually the exhaust; it's a little infrared beacon. And that's partly why Russian tanks from the T-90 have those big red headlights to try and dazzle those receivers. Anyway, that's enough on the tow missile, but as it's the key weapon of this vehicle, I thought that was worth touching on. It is in the process of being replaced now. It's had a very good run. It was very effective, but it had this design limitation that the Bradley would have to stay out in the open staring at the enemy while it was waiting 20 seconds to reach the target.
All right, then in 1977, the redesign of the XM723 was renamed the XM2 for the IFV and the XM3 CFV and later in the year adding the General Support Rocket System, which would then become, later in the year in 1977, they rolled out the M270 MLRS version of what became known as the Bradley. Whilst this was happening, Congress was asking questions about the protection capabilities of the XM2, as they also noticed that the Yom Kippur War happened and looked at all the BMPs full of Egyptian and Syrian troops that were destroyed. And after Vietnam, they didn't want a whole lot of dead US troops affecting their re-election chances. Congress wanted more armour, but the Army said no, as it would mean more cost, more weight, and more development time, which we've already been going for 15 years at this stage. Congress then initiated a report into the XM2 and found it to be too tall, too complex, lacking mobility, no NBCD protection. Troops were expected to wear their suits, their mop suits inside the vehicle, and lacking clear doctrinal use. I find this last point unlikely, but may have had to do with the change in squad size and how a platoon is split up between vehicles and how that affects combat capabilities. For reference, a US infantry squad in Vietnam was 10 men in 2 fire maneuver teams, and after Vietnam changed to 9 men staying together. In Australia during that period, we had squads of 9 split into 3 groups, scout group, rifle group, and gun group, and they would carry out fire and maneuver within the 3 groups. So they would split up because we patrol in smaller organisations. But
it is interesting, and when we talked to Albert Palazzo about Australia's infantry fighting vehicle procurement going on a couple of years ago now, we kind of realised that the point is that between the commander in the vehicle and the gunner and the driver, that's 3 dudes who are basically forming your fire base, and then your other 6 dudes are rounding out a 9-man squad.
They become your manoeuvre element, and the vehicle becomes your fire element. So.
Yeah, it can work, but then you've got to keep them all together. And I mean, currently in Australia, trying to roll out the infantry fighting vehicles, we're still not actually having the troops staying with the vehicle all the time, which means that the commander isn't training with the troops he's going to go to war with. It's problematic, and they just need to have enough of them to keep all these things together. Now,
just while John's poured himself a beer, so I'll just share the message we got from Brandon. It said, "Enjoy, gents. Cheers. As you probably guessed, the Mac and Jack is for John." Which is the one he's got, and the Juno Juice is for me, as they were all out of tall boys, so I'll go into that one next.
So Rob's got 2 little boys instead of 1 tall boy. Make of that what you will.
So anyway, back to the Bradleys. So Congress cut the following year's budget in 1978, when Congress was shown that upgrading the M113 would be expensive and would not meet the requirements, as it was too slow, not enough armour, couldn't take on tanks, and they reinstated the budget for the XM2. 8 prototypes were delivered in December 1978, with the final production approval given in 1980.
Now, let's note that Australia was still trying to lengthen and upgrade the M113 in, 2010?
We're still using them.
Yeah. I think they came out off last year, but anyway.
No, I bet they're still running around in some unit or another. They might be reserve units, but I bet we've still got them.
Yeah.
All right. In October 1981, the vehicle was named after General Omar Bradley, who had died on 8th of April 1981, 44 years and 4 days ago from today. The M3 CFV was originally planned to be named after General Jacob L. De Veers, but it was decided the Bradley name would apply to both, since both vehicles are based on the same chassis. They differ only in some details. But you say, Pentagon Wars are set in 1984, and if production approval was given in 1980, why were they still doing testing in 1984? Why did they take so long to get them built? And I'm guessing that they had to get the money approved by Congress and build a factory and make them, and everything took more time and money. Gone were the days of the M60 factory being built and churning out tanks within 12 months. Disagreements over Colonel Burton's tests were also divisive. Testing was halted and congressional inquiry was carried out. Additional improvements to the vehicle survivability were added to production vehicles by 1988. But don't worry, the first unit to actually get the Bradley was the 41st Infantry 2nd Armoured Division based at Fort Hood in 1981, so they actually had got them coming out. And the 3rd Mechanised Division and US Army Training Center in Vilseck, Germany, were the first to receive them in Europe in September of 1983. Don't say how many they actually got, but we do know that they're actually getting them out there. So maybe they're just getting small packets of them, the 8 prototypes.
But this is where a lot of the problems for Bradley in the early days came from, was the troops were being given them, but the doctrine hadn't been written to actually utilise an IFV, because, as we've said, it's totally different to an APC. Being asked to be sort of like an APC, it wasn't particularly good and it was too heavy. So it wasn't until they actually, huge organisational change, started using it properly. It's like, oh no, it actually works really well.
Now, that's a bit of an anecdotal observation by myself. The competition of putting out contracts to various companies to get the best design means things may take longer and possibly cost more. I'm not sure, but it sure feels that way, rather than a command economy where somebody makes the decision and an order is placed. It's quicker and costs less upfront, but anecdotally costs more time as you need to improve the design after production starts rather than beforehand. That's just me saying that sometimes somebody coming along and say, yeah, we want that one, rather than saying, okay, we'll put it out to these 3 companies, provide us 2 prototypes each, and 2 designs and 1 prototype of each one, come back, and then 6 years later we'll think about which one we like better, or which parts of which designs, and take 3 parts of this one and 2 parts of that one and give it to this 3rd company and say, right, now you've got to make us what they've built, but without any of the personnel or design experience. Anyway.
I mean, this is big questions of industrial policy that no one's got a perfect answer to, I don't think.
As I say, but sometimes it's good. Sometimes it leads to better competition and more innovation, but sometimes you just need something built now. Anyway.
Brandon's joined us, by the way. Thank you for the beers, Brandon.
Thank you very much,
Brandon.
Brandon.
Much appreciate them.
Yep. So that was the journey of the development. Over that time, the Bradley forgot how to swim as it became heavier. It had been able to do 4.5 miles per hour swimming with the tracks.
Hang on, that was also with, it had to have this huge inflatable screen.
Yep.
And the troops never learned how to use that properly, which led to a lot of Bradleys disappearing underwater.
Yeah. However, increased armour and a number of training accidents led to the decision to remove the capability of being amphibious.
Which was also partly because it got too heavy to swim even with the screen on.
Yep.
For those who are watching on YouTube, we have got a picture of the screen. And also, go to totallytank.net if you're listening on the podcast, and we will put all the pictures in the slideshow up there.
There you go. It went from 6 portholes with guns to 2 portholes in the rear with guns to having them all plated over.
Can we quickly talk about the portholes? Because
it's all there.
Okay, yeah. Well, there's just things I want to talk about with that. But
right. You say what you have, and then or you can read. Let me read the script, and then you.
Yeah, no, but I just want to talk about how fundamentally useless they are when you've got a turret with beautiful sensors and a fully stabilized gun that can be accurate out to thousands of yards. The idea that letting troops peer through a little slit and go ping, ping, ping
Wasn't it they had periscopes?
Yeah,
and it's just maintaining the idea it's the battle wagon. The boys in the back want to fire too.
Yeah,
Daka.
Daka. But particularly when you've got a platoon of them, so 4 turrets with beautiful stabilizers and sensors, it just becomes nuts, which is why they eventually deleted it. But they should never have gone forward in the first place.
If the Bushmaster is shooting at things it should be shooting at, you've got to protect it against the
other vehicles.
The infantry is sneaking up out of the jungle at you, which is what you've got the portholes for.
Yeah.
Remember, they're fighting the Viet Cong in Vietnam. They wanted to have all-round protection. They didn't have it in the M113s, which is what allowed them to get in close and fire off an RPG-7, killing everybody inside.
Yeah, well, you know.
So the portholes.
The solution to this is don't start a war in Southeast Asia, but you know.
All right, portholes allow the troops inside to keep firing even while buttoned up in an MBC environment. The portholes came with a M16 machine pistol, which was called the M231 Firing Port Weapon, FPW, developed for the specific purpose, which may not have been as important to the Bradley as intended, but it sure was ahead of its time. Full auto only fire and only the lighter weight M196 tracer rounds were authorized to be used within the weapon due to its barrel's slow twist. And I don't know actually what that means because I'm not an armourer.
It means the rifling is lower, so it doesn't spin the bullet as fast.
Tracers would help troops attempt to walk their fire onto targets outside the vehicle. Long-range accuracy was not a concern. No stock and no sights made it a truly spray and pray weapon.
So the idea here, which, like I said, I think is not great because you've got a perfectly good turret to do this sort of
Time
fire.
for some Juno juice.
But the idea going on here is that because all the lads blazing away out the side ports don't have to carry their ammunition. That they don't need fire discipline or accuracy or anything like that. They can just murder unfortunate villagers as they drive through the town.
What are you trying to say, John? All right, so the weapon could be removed and used dismounted, but was not designed or encouraged to be used that way. Also, it was very loud when fired inside the Bradley. Whilst not used with portholes, they did end up getting used by some vehicle crews for close-range personal defence weapons, shortest manoeuvre inside vehicles and more bullets and a pistol. So
PDWs for armoured crew are now quite a thing, and they're basically an evolution of submachine guns. But the idea is they can pierce body armour. But
and you just want your shorter barreled versions of your traditional armour, which is Australian's got the Steyr carbines type thing. Various armour packages. Was that all? Yep. All right. Various armour packages have been developed for the Bradley, such as the Busk Bradley Urban Survival Kit, so that it can accompany Abrams with their Tusk Tank Urban Survival Kit. These add-ons increase the vehicle weight, and earlier Bradleys could not cope with the extra weight, but eventually the Busk 3 system was able to be installed. The kit includes better IED protection, more external cameras and stronger spotlights, more mobile phone jammers, non-conductive strips in case live power lines fall on the vehicle as they're going through towns, blast protected fuel cells, energy, emergency ramp release, blast-resistant driver's seat, and other bits and pieces like that. Basically,
I do like the idea that they realised that relying on the powered ramp release was leaving them at times unable to get out of the vehicle. So
when it's on fire, you can see getting the flames getting closer to the ammo. Anyway, the Marines don't use a Bradley though, even though it started off amphibious. They only wanted tanks and their own amphibious armoured vehicles, the AAVs. But they did use some of the suspension gear of the Bradleys.
Just want to quickly note the poll is now neck and neck between not a tank and very tank-like. So if you haven't already voted, just get into there.
All right, troops inside that disembark can be blinded and disorientated after getting out of a dark interior into the daylight. So that was something they're trying to address, and but it's still just a situation of, you're getting out in the daylight and you're going to
You know what the solution is?
Have a top hatch open?
Eye patches like pirates.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
Pirates.
Apparently that's why the pirates wore eye patches, was so that when they were moving between below decks and above decks, they'd have one eye that had night sight, and when they went to the dark area, they'd flip the patch up.
There you go.
Yeah.
The added political advantage that was the tow missile made it easy to sell to Congress, as it was not a new capability possessed by the M113. Now, here's one. Vetronics. A word seen a bit when reading about the Bradley, but I've never heard of it before. And looking it up, it found it's a military industry jargon word based on a portmanteau portmanteau of vehicle and electronics. I found later that Task and Purpose also calls it out in one of his vehicles, so it wasn't just me. Vetronics.
Chris Cappy has just in the last couple of weeks moved on from Task and Purpose, but he is going to be starting his own channel, so that's something to watch for. And he might be coming on for a chat with us soon, but we'll see how he goes.
Nice.
He's very popular.
He's
very good.
I really enjoyed his, and I mentioned it later on, his discussion, his video on the M2A4 version and where it's going for the next 25 years. And it's going, wow, yep, that was very useful. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. So then that's a few notes on the Bradley itself. Current Bradley operators. United States, they have 6,230 total built, but now have 2,500 in service and 2,800 in storage. Croatia have 44 delivered of 89 units ordered of the M2A2 Operation Desert Storm version, so one of the older versions. All right, Lebanon has 32 M2A2 Bradleys to fight against ISIS on the border with Syria, but they're not allowed to be driven by the members of the Lebanese army who are part of Hezbollah. That last bit's part of mine. Because you got
that would be very complicated to manage. And if my knowledge of Lebanon is accurate, and I don't think it's totally wrong, I'm willing to bet some Hezbollah boys have taken the Bradleys out for a drive. But
They're saying, here, have these, but don't let those guys drive it, because they are part of your government. Anyway, Russia, they have somewhere between 2 to 5 Bradleys captured from Ukraine. The Kingdom of Saud have 400. Ukraine have 300 something or other.
300 minus the 30% they've lost.
Yep. M2A2 ODS delivered from April 2023 onwards. And even though Pentagon War says Israel was buying an improved version of the Bradley, they never did or were. I actually found it kind of surprising how few foreign operators there were for a vehicle that's been around such a long time. I'd guess that the US didn't want to sell off the technology, but the older versions don't have all the technology upgrades. So maybe countries who couldn't afford them stuck with the M113 or cheaper alternatives. Maybe other countries decided they didn't need an IFV or don't have a mechanized armored divisions that need them. And those that do have that level of combat force already have their own domestic IFVs. Or possibly, Pentagon Wars scared away all the potential buyers. So there you go.
Look, I think the service record of the Bradley is so good. I don't think it's that. I think IFVs are for high-end armies, and there aren't that many countries that can afford them who don't want to build their own. And I think, and there also is also just American gear is expensive, and the export versions are never as good as you can get something better from the Koreans or the Germans, basically.
I mean, the Japanese build their own. And,
yeah.
Anyway, conflicts. Gulf War I. M2 Bradleys destroyed more Iraqi armoured vehicles, not tanks, than the M1 Abrams. A few kills.
TOW missiles for the win.
Yep. A few kills against Iraqi T-72 tanks at close range reported. A total of 20 Bradleys were lost, 3 by enemy fire and 17 due to friendly fire incidents.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about friendly fire. It's a big part of the story.
Which is when they learned that anything seen through NVGs at night is a target first. So they developed...
That's night vision goggles.
Yep. So they developed thermal panels on the side of the vehicles that allowed the identification of Bradleys as not an enemy target, helping stop blue-on-blue casualties.
Now, I really feel this is one of the things that it works in a non-peer conflict against a low-tech adversary, but generally most countries that are thinking about, infrared, camouflage are deliberately trying to make their vehicles camouflaged in the infrared spectrum, not standing out with big crosses on them. And I think in 2025, night vision gear is so widespread, and thermal optics, admittedly not very good ones often, are so widespread and cheaply available from China, unless you tariff them, that putting great big markers so that they stand out in the night vision goggles is not going to be the way forward. But certainly for a while there, it helped the Americans to shoot themselves less. Yeah.
There you go. Crews would also raise a side panel on the side of the vehicle in order to indicate what platoon they are part of for identification at night. Which brings us to the Battle of 73 Easting on the 26th of Feb 1991. The use of newly implemented GPS and advanced optics allowed the US CAV forces to know where they were in unfamiliar terrain and spot enemy positions outside of the enemy range, but within their own range. 2nd Armoured CAV Regiment Eagle Troop with 13 Bradleys in the lead advanced over a ridge during a sandstorm and found themselves in a knife fight with dug-in Iraqi tanks. The Bradleys took out the initial tanks and supporting vehicles, then called up the 9 Abrams of the troop to take the lead, which then continued to the advance through the Iraqi positions. Just letting you know that, yep, they weren't supposed to go into battle against the cavalry. Were there to basically find the Iraqi positions, but because of the sandstorm and coming over the ridge, they didn't actually know they were there. But they handled themselves very well when they got there. They did lose one Bradley during the conflict. One of the three that was taken out by enemy fire. But it was a case of they were supposed to just find the enemy and then let the armoured division move up and take out the tanks. But as they were there, they said, right, forward ho.
And they did discover that the Bushmaster cannon firing the discarding sabot armour-piercing rounds could get through the side of some pretty serious tanks like T-55s. So, but also I believe the British CVRTs with the 30mm cannon were also penetrating quite serious tanks. Now, that's not to say you're going to get through a T-90 through the glasses with them, but it's definitely anything short of a tank that this cannon will definitely do, and for that you've got tow missiles. So,
yeah. All right, I just want to throw this one on the second last day of the conflict. The British 1st Armoured Division was asked to advance and follow up the retreating Iraqi forces as the US forces were waiting for fuel, but the Brits respectfully declined, as they had already been dusted up by the Americans a few times, and thought driving an unknown armoured force across the front of the M2 Bradleys of the exhausted US 1st Infantry Division would be asking for trouble. So instead they hoisted their colours to let everyone know they were British, and then drove east to the coast rather than north in front of the Americans.
Yep. Now, friendly fire, we got more to talk about on that. It's kind of funny because the halftime show is me talking about Omar Bradley, and he's often criticised for letting 2 German armies out of the filet pocket. And his justification was that he was worried that an American pincer meeting a British pincer, they'd all murder each other.
British-Polish pincer, yeah.
So it's kind of funny that long after Bradley was dead, the Bradley vehicle was still causing concern on that front, and also being a victim of it. Remember, of the Bradleys lost in the war, 3 were to enemy fire and 17 were to friendly fire. And there is also the untold story in the war, which is the US Army and the US Air Force were essentially at war with each other. Most of their casualties came from each other because the Air Force kept shooting up American vehicles, and the Army started shooting back at them. So really helps to know what your folks look like.
Right. They were also involved in the invasion of Iraq in 2003 and in Afghanistan, and fighting ISIS in Syria and Iraq. Ukraine is where they are at the moment, though. 68 damage beyond repair of the 300 deployed.
Roughly 1/3. Yeah.
Anyway, numbers are various. Anyway, for each Bradley the US gives to Ukraine, they are then spending the money to upgrade one of their own. So Ukraine is essentially paying for the upgraded US Army Bradleys, plus providing a lot of battlefield testing and feedback.
Yeah, the Ukraine is getting truly screwed on all of these vehicles that get given to them.
Yeah, I was about to say, they're paying for them, boys and girls. It's a case of everybody's taking their money.
Now, Alan and Tasman, but be nice to each other in the comments, and let's slow the bickering down.
Yeah, because let somebody else talk as well, right? That's the important part of these discussions. All right. The Bradleys are well liked by the Ukrainian troops. They're highly mobile, good protection, good firepower, and don't have the weight issues of the Western MBTs. One of the most famous encounters was a pair of Bradleys against a Russian T-90. In an interview with the Ukrainian Bradley crew, he said he had an issue with his Bushmaster armour-piercing ammo feed, so switched to the HE. And from playing video games, he knew even though heavily armoured tanks have areas of weaker armour, or vulnerables, as I would say, and he switched to his HE rounds and hit the optics to blind the tank, and then hit the turret control mechanism, which then spun the turret out of control, leading it to drive into a tree. But the question is, was it War Thunder or World of Tanks? Reddit speculates it was War Thunder. And he said there was only...
Surely the War Thunder forums has the answer to this, but anyway.
All right. He then said there was only 2 of them in the Bradley. So was he in the gunner's or the commander's position? When I asked Google AI, it gave me this answer. When operating in Bradley with only 2 crew members, the 2 positions filled are typically the commander and the gunner, with the driver position left vacant. So it's not taking over the world anytime soon.
No, but I believe the commander has full duplication of the gunner.
It does, but I'm not sure it's full duplication. It's got more communications things, but not as many sites. Whereas main thing is you've got to have a driver to keep the vehicle going. Because
anyway, let's not quote
neither one of those is going to be drive, unlike Google.
Yeah, let's not quote Google AI going forwards, because AI is very unreliable.
That's why I asked the question.
You're just addicted to talking to it. Okay.
All right. Let's go into models of the Bradley. All right, I'll give a quick list of the M3 models and then change and concentrate on the M2, as most of the changes applied at that point were applied to both versions. All right, so the M3A0 version was a restowed M2 Bradley, just added more ammo. They had 12 reloads for the TOW, up from 5 in the M2 version, and covered the side firing ports because they didn't have the crew.
Let's remember that the TOW missile launcher has two rounds loaded, and then if you have fired both of them, you need to withdraw to a safe space and pop the hatch and get out and stuff them back in.
No, you can load them from inside the vehicle, but with the top hatch open.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. You don't have to. You are undercover, but you are vulnerable.
Yeah,
but you're not having to climb out on top of the vehicle to do it.
Yeah, but I would also say that if you have fired 2 TOW missiles in anger, it's okay to pull back over the ridge and take a breather. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Then there was the M3A1 version of the Bradley, which provided NBC masks for all 5 crew.
So, sorry, just for the general audience, NBC is nuclear, biological, chemical, which means it's been hardened to fight on after the end of the world, which is always a mission. It's like, what's the point, guys? Why not just take a break?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you've got limited chemical areas, anyway, they provided masks for all 5 crew rather than just the 3 vehicle crew, and moved the rear periscopes from the top hatch to the rear door, which provides an easy external recognition to tell if it's an M2 or an M3 from the rear. There you go, boys and girls. Now we get to the M2A1 from 1986. They have an improved TOW missile system, NBC marks for the 3 vehicle crew, and a fire suppression system. Included an internal water tank for the troops that, if hit, would douse the ammo and reduce possible fires. And they added a 7th crew seat for the infantry. So, and that internal water tank, they then got rid of it later on.
Yeah.
Which means that the troops now have to bring in a big bucket of water, a canister of water for themselves. But
there's one thing that distinguishes an Australian designed vehicle, and that's enough water storage.
And aircon.
Oh, look, we've all got Camelbacks. Aircon now.
But the Bradley gets aircon later on. Anyway, the M2A2 from 1988 improved the engine to a Cummins 600 horsepower diesel. Improved the armor and ability to mount external explosive reactive armor, and increasing the protection up to 30mm APDS rounds and RPGs. Removed.
I would say that's some RPGs.
RPGs rather than ATGMs.
Yeah.
Removed the amphibious trim vane at the front, as it could no longer swim. Covered up the side portholes. Provided space laminate armor on the rear hatch and the side skirts, and increased the stowage space on the turret rear. Installed a Kevlar spore liners inside, and rearranged the infantry seating, reducing it back to 6, and increased the weight to 33 tons. But with the introduction of the C-17 Globemaster III in 1991, the Bradley was then cleared for being air transportable.
But let's remember, the US has allowed the C-17 production line to close, so these incredibly valuable strategic airlift assets that the whole world clamours for and wants just aren't being made anymore, and we're going to have to figure out something else going forward. Anyway.
Cummins sounds like the name of an Australian PM that leads to a coalition government for 11 months.
Well, Pat Cummins is our cricket captain. He's one of the best players ever, and the old men really hate him because he's a bit woke. He's awesome.
I bet he couldn't drink 52 beers on the flight from Sydney to London.
Let's not
back in the days when you could take a flight directly from Sydney to London without stopping along the way.
Yes, so there's a video that's been doing the rounds. David Boone was the cricket player who drank the 52 beers on the flight, and what I learned...
26 hours.
What I learned watching this video was that the chief stewardess actually got the pilot to go around again at Heathrow so he could get the last 2 beers in. Just to set the record.
I mean, whether or not that story is true, I don't. It makes a good tale, but who knows? Anyway, the M2A2 ODS, which operational Desert Storm in 1992, applying the improvements from Desert Storm, they have a integrated GPS with TACNAV, a tactical navigation system. So basically, you have a little map showing you, like you do on your car these days, or your phone, or everything else, saying you are here. This is the terrain around you, and also it would show who else in your system was around you. So you could say, okay, that's a Bradley, that's a Abrams, and I know where they all are, so I don't shoot him because I know he's on my team.
All of this stuff is great until the enemy knows how to spoof it, but yeah.
I also gave him a digital compass system, thermal viewers for the driver, eye-safe laser rangefinder. So you stop blinding your own troops when you're playing funny buggers and lasing and saying, oh, I could see your vehicle and you're only 800 meters away. Thanks, I'm blind now.
And there is also the other issue, though, that for high velocity rounds, learning to eyeball distances is much more useful than relying on a automatic rangefinder, which may be telling you the distance to the target or maybe telling you the distance to an object 300 yards in front of the target or a kilometre behind the target.
But what it meant for these ones was that they no longer...
At least they weren't blinding people with it. Yeah.
Well, actually, the blinding was going to happen previously, but with the laser rangefinders, it means they didn't have to put out a ranging shot first with the 7.62 before they started opening up. Which Anyway, they installed the thermal combat identifier panels on the side. You can say, don't shoot me in the dark, I am a Bradley, and missile countermeasures. Side bench seating was installed for the 6th Infantry, with the 7th man again smushed up behind the driver in front of the turret. They also got given a Javelin ATGM to carry. This is for the infantry, so they could carry their own ATGM, so that when they got out, they could then use that themselves. And also, this is an important part, boys and girls, they installed an MRE heater. Meals ready to eat heater was built in, much like they must have liked the British boiling vessels that they'd seen in Desert Storm. And here are the instructions on how to use it.
Okay, Rob's going to read you all the instructions now. So
this came from the documentation for it. I found it online, but I'm sharing this. So,
sure, here we go.
Mechanised infantry soldiers who served in Desert Storm found it difficult to heat their MREs. An MRE heater has been added to the left side sponson behind the driver in the M2A2 to permit the heating meals for Bradley soldiers. It is located to the left side rear in the M3A2. Heating an MRE is simple. Unfasten the latch and remove the MRE heater lid. Lift and remove the inner container. Fill the MRE heater inner compartment with drinking water up to the 2-pint level mark. Do not exceed the 2-pint level mark, unless heating water only. If only heating water, do not exceed the 7-pint level line. Replace the inner container. Place up to 5 MREs in the container. Pierce the top of each package to allow for pressure to release as the packages are heated. Add sufficient water to cover the MRE packages. Install the MRE heater lid and fasten the latch. Move the MRE heater power switch from off to high. The green light and amber lights will illuminate. The power toggle switch has 3 positions. Off, low will heat to about 155 degrees Fahrenheit. High will heat to about 185 degrees Fahrenheit. The amber light will turn off after about 35 minutes. The heater is hot. Remember that, the heater is hot. The heater will remain hot and maintain the hot temperature for 3 hours. When the amber light goes off, turn the power switch off and unfasten the latch on the MRE lid. Lift and remove the MRE heater lid. Do not remove the lid if steam is venting. Remove the inner container from the MRE heater using lid hooks and gloves. Use the hot water from the water tap to mix with powdered beverages. Avoid clogging the water tap. Do not mix beverages or food in the inner compartment. The MRE heater only heats food and water. It will not cook, boil, or fry, nor will it disinfect or decontaminate water.
Now,
there you go, boys and girls.
Yes.
You now know. That was the documentation provided for how to operate this thing.
Yeah. Which, if you needed that advice, you probably weren't smart enough to understand it. But the thing I do...
Do you know some soldiers are really dumb?
I know. I know.
Some of them highly capable, but really dumb with simple stuff.
True, but and also like I can
so capable at doing their jobs, but yeah.
I've worked in workplaces where the staff room microwave had truly horrendous things happen in it, so I get it. But I do want to note, on a very serious note, The Iron Fist active protection system caused an enormous amount of trouble because the Bradley didn't generate enough electricity to run it. And Iron Fist needs 850 watts. The British boiling vessel system needs 1,000 watts. So this MRE heater was pulling more power than... well, I'm assuming this is lower power than the British boiling vessel because it doesn't boil. They specifically said it doesn't boil. But it's still a hell of an electricity draw for a vehicle that didn't have the required juice. So we've got another beer. Thank you, Brandon. Let's see if I can open it with my little thing. You keep talking, Rob.
All right. The M2A3 from 2000 transformed the Bradley to a digital warfighting and enhanced computerized communications and information displays, including links to the Abrams and supporting Apache gunships. An independent thermal sight for the commander was installed, and the IBAS improved Bradley acquisition system, enabling automatic gun adjustments once the target was set. Basically makes it better at shooting things. And it was reinforced. They reinforced the roof with titanium. The squad leader's display in the infantry compartment allows them to see what's going on outside the vehicle and all the digital information that is available to the vehicle commander, the crew, and the connected forces. So the infantry knows what to expect when dismounting. So they're not jumping out and saying, "Oh my goodness, there's a lot of artillery going on," or something like that.
I mean, in theory, the vehicle commander should... You can make an argument should be acting as the squad leader, but
he's got his own job to do,
yeah.
right? The squad leader's got their job, and you don't. Yeah. There's the two of them. Anyway, I'm now drinking the Founders KBS, the original Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels.
So it's a dark boy.
Yep, it is a dark boy.
Very dark boy.
For those who can see, this is a very dark boy. The beer that taught us that patience truly is a virtue. This big, bold Imperial Stout is brewed with premium chocolate and coffee, then aged in bourbon barrels that introduce powerful notes of vanilla, coca, and charred oak. KBS is a luxuriant, full-bodied drinking experience that emanates sophistication while honouring our craft beer roots.
And it's 12% alcohol by volume. Woo!
Oh, yeah. There we go.
This is going to be fun.
Fun times. Thanks, Brandon. Cheers. Ooh,
it's delicious.
That is really nice.
Yeah. You can taste those bourbon barrels.
You can taste the chocolate. Chocolate and coffee. If you want a chocolate and coffee beer, that's really nice.
That might be the best stout I've ever drunk.
I mean, is it better than Sinha? Well, I would have to put the two together to be able to try it. This is the Sri Lankan chocolate stout that we had many years ago. We really enjoyed, but this is right up there, if not better. I'll quite happily say, KBS, well done. That's boys and girls. That is a really good beer.
Barrel aged stouts. Anyway, Rob, we've got to push on. We've got. I don't know how much longer the camera's got in it.
That's not even an hour yet.
If we suddenly cut out and go to me talking about Omar Bradley, it's because the camera's died. But we'll be back. It'll all recover.
All right. The M2A4 redesigning the Bradley for modern warfare to reduce space, reduce weight, and so that more can be added back on, and increase the engine and electrical power, improve cooling after extra electronics and armor have then heated the vehicle up. And all the previous enhancements increase the weight of the vehicle, making it sit lower and more vulnerable to IEDs and decrease mobility over rough terrain. So they install larger tracks, shock absorbers, and a new suspension support system with heavyweight torsion bars, along with the raised seating for the crew and infantry to protect against IEDs. So basically, you don't have your feet on the floor anymore unless you... Anyway, 700 of those to be upgraded to by 2029, and these are the ones last off the assembly line.
Just quickly on the mines, there's the impact from the bottom, which they've tried to alleviate. There's also the issue they discovered with hitting mines that with the low ceiling, the crews were breaking their necks when they were being flung up into the ceiling.
Yeah, but, I thought I'd read that they increased the ceiling height. But I couldn't find that when I was writing it out. But I remember seeing that somewhere. I
mean, suspending the seats from the ceiling is a good way to go with these things as well. But
they ended up being 6 miles per hour slower and 40 tons. They're twice as expensive as the original M2s. and they have improved steps cut onto the sides to allow easy entry for the driver and into the turret. So you don't have to climb over there. You don't slip as easily. And as I was saying before, shout out to Task and Purpose, who has a great rundown of the M2A4E1 and what new capabilities are expected of the Bradley into the future. The M2A4E1 with Iron Fist from 2018, a larger engine, which is the 675 horsepower, a new transmission, and a smart power management system to better manage electrical power needs of the vehicle for present and future requirements, and a new IED jammer. The increase in electrical power enabled the installation of the Iron Fist active protection system in 2024. And it also gets aircon. There you go.
Which again is a big power draw, but we've talked about it before, but let's talk about it again. The idea that you're going to put fighting men in a metal box and drive around for 8 hours and then expect them to come out of that oven in good fighting condition is ludicrous. And for the relatively low cost of cooling the air that they're in to get them out in fighting condition is very important.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for those who would just say, why don't they just add an extra battery into the vehicle to get more electrical output? Then problem being is that the batteries heat up. They vent gases and it poisons everybody inside. So you've got to be very careful with that sort of stuff. Anyway, there was reports the other week of a new weapon fired from the TAL ATGM launcher in March 2025 with the Bradley launching a 670.
So it's an unknown missile that just went by the name of 670 in the reporting of it.
Just a number designation. They haven't said what it was. It was during Project Convergence Capstone 5 in Fort Irwin, California. My personal guess is a loitering ammunition because they were all the rage 5 years ago, and that's how long it might have taken to get into the Bradley.
And also, it did appear to have rear fins that looked like they were retarding. When I say retarding, I mean that they will slow down the missile, and it seems suitable for a loitering munition. But
and we'll probably know in about another 2 months. But I thought I'd better mention here that new things are coming. Well, new things are there, as we don't know. Recent innovations is that the new versions and upgrades are being built as digital designs and submitted for review and feedback in VR rather than building physical prototypes. So they're allowing crew and designers to basically climb into these vehicles and see how it affects the ergonomics and where things are at and so forth, and say, oh, I wouldn't have that switch there, I'd have it over here so I can reach it, and all those bits and pieces, so that don't actually, whether or not it's faster and better, don't know yet, but they're playing around with it.
Okay, now in the comments, people are very upset the beer tube isn't here. And look, I just need to explain. We've got all this incredibly high ABV beer that Brandon sent us, and Rob's also got a couple of his own that we need to drink. And the idea that we would drink a 6-pack of Victoria Bitter before we started drinking all these high ABV beers was just a little too much even for us. So it'll be
the
back.
Experienced professionals that we are not David Boone in 1989 drinking 52 cans.
Yeah.
All right. We might get through 20.
We've only got at most a 3-hour podcast to get through these. So Beer Tube's coming back. And as I explained at the start of the show, unfortunately, I drank some of the Moose Drill last night with my friend Dan. So,
there you go. All right. Yeah. Variants. We'll get into the variants. The Plastic Bradley. Plastic Bradley.
Well, they loved the idea of glass armour through the 1970s. They kept trying to make it work. It never worked, but they really wanted it to work.
In 1983, the Army was looking at alternatives to aluminum and steel for armour and decided to give plastic a go. Using glass-reinforced polyester, they built
Which sounds a lot like fiberglass to me. But
they built a Bradley hull and later a turret on an aluminum frame and then put titanium diboride ceramic tiles on the outside. On paper and through testing, the numbers were very good, and the project continued to look into things going through till 1992 with 15 to 20% weight savings, better thermal characteristics, less vibrations, quieter, reduced spalling, lower radar signature, and better protection against
When
mines.
they say reduced spalling, I'm willing to guess, and this might have been what killed it, this speculation on my part here, though, is there'd be reduced spalling, but it would fill the cabin with mesothelioma causing fibres.
Back in the 80s, it didn't worry about mesothelioma.
Yeah, I'm just saying there might well be reasons.
Asbestos was still all the rage back then, wasn't it?
But fiberglass armour, when the fiberglass gets smashed, it's incredibly dangerous to be around. And I have some feelings this might be what killed it off. But yeah.
All right, lower radar signature, better protection against mines and artillery, shrapnel, lower manufacturing and through-life costs. But the external ceramic ballistic tiles were too vulnerable to damage and didn't have enough multi-shot resistance. Basically, if you hit it once, it's gone, and then if the round hits the same spot, it goes straight through.
Well, you'd make that argument against DRA, but no one minds that.
No,
anyway.
but you've still got proper armour behind that one. Yeah. The project died off, and the fate of the plastic hull and turrets are not known by the interwebs. And has anyone looked in the field in Virginia where the T-28 was hiding? All right, 27 years later, we might find it. Actually, it is 27 years later, so maybe if somebody looks there, we might find it. All right. The other variants, the M7 Bradley Fire Support Team.
B-Fist!
An upgrade.
And I love, because B-Fist sounds deadly, but it's actually the least deadly Bradley in itself. But it's a bit like the most dangerous man on a battlefield has a map and a radio and knows how to use them. And the B-Fist is the equivalent of that operator.
All right, Tasman's asking, the Australian Boxer is so huge, I'm wondering if they could have a special beer machine after operations.
Well, they could probably fit it in there.
Yeah, they could definitely fit it in there. It is,
but it will get bogged everywhere, so yeah, anyway.
All right, B-Fist, an upgraded fire support vehicle with integrated target location equipment to help direct artillery fire and airborne munitions so they can get arty or bombs on target quicker and more accurately rather than waiting for a fumble-fingered second lieutenant to enter in the numbers.
And call him fire in his own position by accident. Yeah, anyway.
It also has equipment for use by dismounted observers, removes the tow missile launcher and adds a laser designator and has been deployed to Ukraine. The M6 Bradley Linebacker, an air defence vehicle with a quad Stinger surface-to-air missile launcher in place of the Tower missile launcher.
I just feel Stinger is too small a missile for a SHORAD vehicle of this size. I mean, I get that it's what the Army had in their inventory, but I would have been using something like, Evolved Sea Sparrow or something like that. But anyway, yeah.
They were thinking that there was only the occasional thing that might get through their own air superiority. So anyway, maintains the Bushmaster, and the M6 Linebacker is no longer in service, but possessed a unique role in the US Army, providing highly mobile air defence at the front line. And I'd say they're probably looking to bring them out of retirement for Ukraine if they haven't already.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, the German Gepard appears to be the go-to short-range air defence platform, and
EOS, mate,
and what everyone's trying to recreate.
Selling off to the Canberra-based company EOS, selling off their stuff to the Israelis, even though they're not allowed to at the moment. It
was quite funny because we had a prime ministerial debate because there's an election on during the week, and the Prime Minister said straight to camera, Australia is not providing any weapons to Israel. And I looked at my partner Sheridan and I said, that is a lie. And then just yesterday it came out that, it backed it up that it's a lie. But anyway, yeah.
Anyway, and Hans, good on you for getting your T-shirts. There you go. Mm-hmm. Well done.
But there are T-shirts, totallytank.net, demerch. It'll take you to Redbubble. You'll get our T-shirts. They're going to be awesome.
Right.
We have elections every 3 years, Alexander Blad. But anyway, right, let's go.
3 years or before the certain date. Anyway, but before the Linebacker, there was the Bradley Stinger fighting vehicle, BSV-FV, was designed to carry a Stinger man-pads team who could pop up out of the vehicle or provide anti-air missile support. This left them very exposed and so was replaced by the Linebacker.
Yeah.
The Bradley M993 chassis carries the highly effective M270 multiple launch rocket system, MLRS. 1,300 of them built in the US and Europe.
So this is almost, that 1,300 is a very big production run. So it's there's a lot of these things being built. Yeah.
A very successful build that has been able to wipe out grid squares from up to 20 miles away and now up to about 200 miles away.
But so the advantage here is otherwise you've got to put this rocket system on a truck, and trucks are limited in the roads they can go on and where they can support. But these things can rumble, obviously not with the tanks. That's a waste of a rocket system. But,
they're right behind them.
Yeah.
They're 20 k's behind them. Anyway, this
would pair up really nicely with the B-Fist, I would have thought.
Sure. Anyway, this was a design that got lots of countries behind. That a lot of countries got behind and were happy to buy or build under license from the US. They're able to sit outside regular artillery range. They were highly mobile, they were accurate, and they were devastating. As long as you could keep the rockets loaded, they'll keep on going. And that's the big thing, is keeping the ammo to them, because they could fire every 4 minutes. And taking out a grid square every 4 minutes from your divisional buddy MLRS.
Yeah, I mean, it's all fun and games until you're on the grid square getting removed. But yeah.
Right. Mission Enabler Technologies demonstrator, the MET-D, is an experimental variant of the M2 Bradley, which prototypes the use of surrogate robotic combat vehicles. Basically, they sit inside their Bradley and they drive around a remote control.
So it's a mothership.
It's a mothership. Anyway. but they drive around the remote control armored fighting vehicles. Anyway, keep on going. This is rubbish. Then there was the Japanese Type 89 IFV, which is their version of the Bradley, and not to be confused with the Chinese Type 89 APC, which is a battle taxi, not a battle wagon. There we go. All right, here we get on to the legacy. My feelings on the legacy of the Bradley. From what started a long time ago and went through a development hell, exacerbated by losing a war that sucked up all the money that the Bradley then became an incredible battle wagon and kept its crew and its troops safe, and bringing a lethality to the battlefield that enables it to take on any opponent. It's speculated that the Bradleys are to remain in service as part of armoured brigade combat teams until the 2050s, so another 25 years at least. That said, search for the Bradley's replacement, the XM30 mechanised infantry combat vehicle, has commenced, looking for a hybrid vehicle featuring a suite of lethal capabilities to include a...
Well, they've got to be lethal, don't they? Yeah, every military media release loves the lethality. I'm not saying lethality isn't important, but it's a buzzword that gets overused. Anyway, that's not your fault. Continue, please, Rob.
Includes a 50mm cannon, a remote turret, EOS might be providing that one, anti-tank guided missiles, machine guns employed through an advanced third-generation forward-looking infrared sensor, an integrated protection suite, kit of armour, signature management capabilities, as well as intelligent fire control, and a partridge in a pear tree. With
all the buzzwords. It's got all the buzzwords, which is what almost killed the Bradley in the first place, was trying to get all the buzzwords without saying, what do we need? What do we have to have? What are we willing to give up? Real sharp decision-making needs to be made at some point.
With prototypes expected and testing completed by 2027, when a design will be announced.
But they have already had 3 processors that have died before now, so let's not hold our breath on this.
Jonas is going, Vietnam wasn't declared. No, neither is Ukraine.
There's not been the US hasn't declared war since 1941.
Where were we? Design winner will be announced, and the first vehicles delivered by 2029. But I'll guess we'll be lucky to get there by 2035, which compared to the Bradleys is not bad, and we may even get another fun movie about military procurement out of it.
I mean, compared to the main ground combat system, let's see which gets there first.
Yeah, as I say, we'll do a collaboration. Tank
now,
video.
I've got some bad news for you, Tasman. Bad news. The poll is currently sitting at very tank-like on 54%, neck and neck with not a tank at 46. So there we go. Now,
but don't worry, there is still more time to vote, Pete. So
you can't vote again.
But if you haven't voted yet, you've got a chance to influence this election.
Now, while we
stop the aluminum, actually, Alexander.
Anyway. While we go and get rid of some of this beer to make room for more beer, we are going to... I've done a little video on the life and times of Omar Bradley, the man who the Bradley was named after. I found researching it to be a fascinating story. I hope that covers through in what I am presenting you now.
Not Devers?
Well, they didn't name it after him, otherwise we'd have done it differently. Okay, so enjoy me talking about Omar Bradley. Having devoted a segment of the Patton episode to the subject of George Patton, it only seemed fair to give his colleague Omar Bradley a similar treatment in the episode on the Bradley IFV. So here goes, folks. It's quite the contrast to the gilded life of Patton, and the ending is a lot happier too. Omar Bradley was born in 1893 in Randolph County, Missouri. His father, John Bradley, was a schoolteacher who grew crops to supplement the family income. It's said the senior Bradley never earned more than $40 in a month. They never owned a wagon, a horse, or a mule. Despite his poverty, John Bradley was obviously an intelligent man and named Omar for a newspaper editor he admired. He taught his son to play baseball, hand-carving his bats, how to read and write, and how to hunt and shoot. This proud hardscrabble life took its toll, and John Bradley died when Omar was 14 years old on 31 January 1908 from pneumonia related to walking 6 miles to work every day in the middle of winter. John Bradley was 40 years old. Sarah Bradley is on the public record as having worked as a seamstress and took in boarders to make ends meet. Both of these activities are often used as shorthand for sex work, and while we don't know for sure, it's hard to be critical of what a mother will do to feed her children. Any which way you cut it, times were tough for the Bradley family. Despite this, Omar did well in high school, both as a student and athlete. There in Moberly, Missouri, he met his future wife, Mary Quayle, at the local church and in high school. They would stay together until her death in 1965, while he rose from being a poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks to a globe-straddling warlord. Quite the contrast to the messy love lives of certain other generals. After graduating high school, Omar Bradley worked as a boilermaker for the Wabash Railroad. This job paid the princely sum of 17 cents an hour, or $5.74 in today's money. He was trying to save to attend the University of Missouri. Just how much you can put away for college while earning 17 cents an hour is a bit of a mystery, but at this point, fate intervened. The Missouri congressional appointment to West Point in 1911 had been put out to a public exam process. Bradley's Sunday school teacher, John Cruson, sought him out and encouraged him to apply. Omar decided against it because he hadn't studied algebra in 3 years, and one of the competitors was known to have been studying full-time for a year for the exam, and also because he couldn't afford to travel to the exam hall in St. Louis. Now, I'm reading somewhere between the lines, but some motivated mentors appear to have intervened because the Wabash Railway provided him with free travel to St. Louis, and he did take the exam. He was not able to finish all the questions in the allotted time. Despite this, he finished second in the exams, and the winner declined the placement. Omar Bradley received a telegram on 27 June 1911 informing him he had 4 days to report to West Point. He finished 44th in his class with letters in football and baseball. He also found time to play baseball in local semi-pro leagues, strictly as an amateur to conform with West Point's rules, and reportedly could have turned pro if the Army wasn't calling. He graduated West Point in 1915 as part of the class the stars fell on, which is to say it provided the US Army with a great many generals. Perhaps more important, every single player in Bradley's baseball team who stayed in the Army became a general. In 1916, he married Mary in Columbia, Missouri. He spent World War I guarding copper mines in Montana. A planned deployment to Europe with the 19th Division was cut off due to the war ending. In the interwar period, Bradley returned to his love of education in the Army. His wife, it should be noted, had a degree in education combined with his father's passion for the field. While instructing at the US Army Infantry School, George C. Marshall described Bradley as quiet, unassuming, capable, with sound common sense, absolute dependability. Give him a job and forget it. On 20 February 1941, Bradley was made a temporary brigadier, bypassing the rank of colonel, so he could command the US Army Infantry School at Fort Benning. The US Army was getting serious about going to war, and capable, intelligent men who were not dickheads were in high demand. In this role, he developed the officer candidate school model, something he probably had some interesting ideas about when trying to build a new army, given his unusual background. On 15 February 1942, 2 months after US entry into World War II, he was made a Major General. The front line finally called for Bradley in 1943 in North Africa, where he served as Patton's deputy, rebuilding 2 Corps after Kasserine Pass, while also retaining an independent role as Eisenhower's representative. Taking command of 2 Corps in April, Bradley took the surrender of 200,000 Germans and Italians after capturing Bizerte. His performance in North Africa earned him a promotion to Lieutenant General on 2 June 1943, and he took 2 Corps to Sicily as part of Operation Husky. It also led Eisenhower to write to Marshall, "There is very little I need to tell you about him, because he is running absolutely true to form all the time. He has brains, a fine capacity for leadership, and a thorough understanding of the requirements of modern battle. He has never caused me one moment of worry. He is perfectly capable of running an army. He has the respect of all his associates, including all the British officers that have met him." His star, or should that be stars, now firmly on the rise, Omar was chosen to lead the US First Army for D-Day, taking his headquarters ashore on 10 June 1944. There is some controversy about his aversion to deploying armour in the landings, as opposed to the British use of Hobart's funnies. I'm prepared to give him a pass here, both because the beaches were less suitable, and also because there were very limited American funnies available, and the complication of adding British vehicles and crews to his force late in the planning would have created their own difficulties. Bradley planned Operation Cobra, the breakout from the beachhead using the strategic bombers to pulverise German lines. When the bombing line wavered, horrific friendly fire ensued, which took the life of Lieutenant General Leslie McNair. Bradley described the scene. The ground belched, shook and spewed dirt to the sky. Scores of our troops were hit, their bodies flung from slit trenches. Doughboys were dazed and frightened. A bomb landed squarely on McNair in a slit trench and threw his body 60 feet and mangled it beyond recognition except for the 3 stars on his collar. Strategic bombers were not used in a tactical role again in the war, which, given that the tactic was very successful, admittedly at a cost, makes one wonder. As more forces arrived in Normandy, Bradley took command of the 12th Army Group, with his former boss, the aristocratic George Patton, now serving under him. The 12th Army Group would eventually consist of 4 field armies, 43 divisions, and 1.3 million men, the largest group of American troops to serve under a single field commander. Omar Bradley, the Missouri Boilermaker. Bradley was not, however, a perfect general. They don't exist. He allowed the German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army to escape from the fillet pocket for fear of friendly fire should a British pincer meet an American one going the other way. Given the history of American forces and friendly fire, this is a very well-founded fear, but the truly great generals of history would not have let 2 enemy armies escape distraction. Bradley claimed that ultra-intercepts had led him to believe the Germans had already escaped, but they were wrong, and so was he. He was, however, absolutely spot on when he opposed and objected to the debacle of Operation Market Garden. Another black spot was the Battle of Hurtgen Forest, described as the most ineptly fought series of battles in the war in the West, although blame there must be shared with Courtney Hodges. Bradley was also sidelined in the Battle of the Bulge, with his forces being placed under the temporary command of the British Montgomery, a move which prompted Bradley to resign and Eisenhower to refuse to accept his resignation. March 1945 earned Bradley his 4th star, as Eisenhower had been bumped up to 5 in December 44. Bradley led the first forces to cross the Rhine River into Germany since the Napoleonic Wars by capturing a crucial crossing at Remagen. His force would meet up with the Red Army at the Elbe River. Most famously, Bradley was known as the GI's General, although it's thought that was largely a public relations fiction. A general commanding 1.3 million men would be derelict in his duties if he was personally a buddy to all of them or even a meaningful number of them. He was, however, distinctive with his calmness and courtesy when addressing subordinates. That said, he was more willing to sack poor performers than his colleagues and recommended the death sentences of several soldiers. The end of the Second World War was just the start of Omar Bradley's career, which is really saying something for a 4-star general. From August 1945 to November 1947, he ran the Veterans Administration, improving healthcare and access to education under the GI Bill of Rights. There is a Bradley room at the Department of Veterans Affairs to this day. In 1948, Bradley became the Army Chief of Staff, remarking that the Army of 1948 could not fight its way out of a paper bag. In August 1949, President Truman made Bradley the first chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, where he had to preside over further cuts to the military and battle the Navy, describing them as fancy Dans who won't hit the line with all they have on every play unless they can call the signals, and who were in open rebellion against the civilian control. On 22nd September 1953, Omar Bradley was made General of the Army, the last man to hold that rank. He was also made the first chairman of the NATO Military Committee, a post he held until 1953. Bradley had to deal with the numerous debacles of the Korean War and is credited with convincing President Truman to sack Douglas MacArthur. I'll just quote Truman's words about sacking Dugout Doug. "I fired him because he wouldn't respect the authority of the president. I didn't fire him because he was a dumb son of a bitch, although he was, but that's not against the law for generals. If it was, half to 3/4 of them would be in jail." Shortly after MacArthur's sacking, Bradley would testify to Congress, "Red China is not the powerful nation seeking to dominate the world. Frankly, in the opinion of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, this strategy would involve us in the wrong war, at the wrong place, at the wrong time, and with the wrong enemy." In 1953, he left active military service, but remained on active duty, in part because he had never amassed any great wealth, and Lord knows he came from none. He refused to take a job with a weapons company, considering that to be unethical, a fine position precious few generals have taken in the years since. This presented a problem to the establishment, as it would be a bad look for a general of the army to be living in poverty. Eventually, a position was found for him as chairman of the board of the Bulova Watch Company, which he held from 1958 to 1973. Mary Bradley died in 1965, and he remarried a year later. The semi-retired Omar Bradley was a long-time member of the Moberly Rotary Club back in Missouri, played golf at the Moberly Country Club, and had a Bradley pew in the Moberly Central Christian Church, where he'd met Mary all those years ago. With the help of ghostwriters, he wrote 2 books, A Soldier's Story and A General's Life. Bradley was a key resource for the writers of the Patton movie when the Patton family denied access to the Patton diaries. His last public appearance was the inauguration of Ronald Reagan in 1981. When he died on 8 April 1981, Omar Bradley concluded a period of active duty begun on 1 August 1911. At 69 years, 8 months and 7 days, it was the longest service in US history. As a young boy myself, living in Washington, D.C. at the time of his death, the ceremony surrounding his funeral made an enduring impression on me. The last of the fighting 5 stars was a term I remember well from that time. It's a remarkable testimony to the America of the early 20th century. The man of such raw talent could be identified and taken from obscurity and poverty to the very highest ranks of power. I'm not sure many such societies exist today. Omar Bradley was one of the better people we've ever looked at in the course of making this show. Okay, so we are back, and I hope people enjoyed that view on Omar Bradley. So just quickly, we want to thank our patrons, the folks on the inside group chat that even Pete Hegseth couldn't mess up. Our Artissipateer, so they get the interview early or the segment like that, and the ad-free video and audio of the show. We've got Brian Jenkins, Chicago John, Chris Pezze, Cornelius Weber, Johnny Oot, Late Apex, Maxi Mist, Monty Mace, and Pear. In the Apprentice tier, they also get the ad-free audio and video of the show. We have Anton Gorbanov, Carter Heller, Christoph Keller, Dan Sapienza, David Mulvaney, Elliot Spicer, Floaty Bird, Yi Hook, Hans Wang, Henry Hemmer, J. Beckman Strauss, Jamie Stokes, Red Rum X1216, Russell Phillips, Scotch 12, Steve Matthews, and Tony L. Okay, so I just quickly wanted to note that in terms of Omar Bradley running the Bulova Watch Company, I did get in touch with a friend in Texas who runs a watch store and does watch repairs, and asked him what he thought of Bulova watches from the period that Bradley was chairman of the board. And he said they were always a very innovative American company. They're now owned by Citizen, the Swiss watch company. But the Omar Bradley period, in terms of their mechanical soundness and ease of repair, they was absolutely their golden era. So not only was he a very successful general and manager of soldiers, but he ran the company extremely well at the same time. So Omar Bradley, what a guy. Okay, in terms of Patreon and Apple bastardry, so we keep saying keep calm, carry on, but sign up using a web browser rather than the Patreon app, because otherwise there's an Apple tax. And to find out all the links for things, totallytank.net. I can't say it often enough. Okay, Rob, where are we at with what we're doing with the beers?
We have a American beer. We have the Sierra Nevada Atomic Torpedo IPA.
Atomic Torpedo, because
Imperial IPA.
The Torpedo is their most famous beer, and the Atomic Torpedo, I'm guessing, is going to kill an aircraft carrier.
Yep, it's 9%.
Oh, God.
So not quite.
Jesus. Oh, damn it.
So we're going from a 12% down to a 9. Yeah, that's pretty good.
I'm going to need to sleep after this. It's getting to late afternoon now, but
we got rugby to watch tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, the Brumbies are playing the Reds.
And
yes.
the Waratahs actually beat the bloody Chiefs. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
Anyway, Waratahs suck. We hate them. We'll have to talk about going to watch a couple of games in May.
Rag is mocking my beer pouring. Yeah, it's poured out head. These glasses are a bit difficult, but anyway.
That's how you give good head. There you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's 9%. It's family owned, operated, and argued over. There you go, Sierra Nevada. So we'll give this a try. I've got to say, following up from the KBS, the founders KBS, it's got a a high bar to leap over, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that stat was astonishingly good. So
I was saying to John before that 2 of these KBS would do a wonderful night. It'd be delicious. It'd get you, rock your socks, and
you'd sleep
2,
well.
Yeah, 2 is all you'd need. 2 is all you'd need, and it's a small bottle. It's a 375. If that, you know.
All right, now moving on, we'll get back to review the
Atomic Torpedo Imperial IPA
by the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company.
All right.
Yes. So OzArmorFest 2025 is at the end of August. So we are still encouraging all our listeners to make the trip to Cairns, Australia, and come ride some tanks and talk about tanks, and come to the pub every night at all of Cairns' amazing breweries, and we're going to have a fantastic time. So
we are. Damn straight we're having.
So we're looking forward to seeing some of you there. But
Hans at 2:28 a.m. just cracked a freshie. Good on you.
Good work, Hans.
That is great work.
Now, we just want to talk about recent events and some of the stuff we said in the last episode, and we did
outlook in general in life.
We were accused of being anti-American by some people, and look, I just want to say that for Rob and I, killing fascists is the quaint ethnic folkway of our people, and we also want to know also of a great many American people. And so, be it bombing Dresden or driving tanks into Berlin, us non-fascists are indeed an intolerant bunch.
For us, it's taking Syria. Taking Damascus.
Catching Damascus, So, with an undisguised fascist takeover underway in America, we are in favour of that, to the extent that the opinions of some tank podcasters in Australia matter at all.
Drunk tank podcasters.
Yeah. But as someone who personally spent 3 years as a child living in the US, and I've visited the US many times, and I've had a few American girlfriends over the years, I remain extremely pro the American people. But I was raised an anti-fascist by my father and grandfathers who all served the Crown and uniform, and I don't plan on changing it. I mean, my God, it's come to the point, Rob, where saying I'm an anti-fascist is a controversial opinion. Because when we were growing up, that was extremely mainstream. But just as being an anti-Nazi didn't make you racist against Germans, but boy, did the Nazis try to make that argument, we're going to have to get discerning with our language going forward.
All right. My point is, we're the French, right? Put not your trust in princes. Maintain a position of self-reliance so that Elon can't turn off your military when he feels like it. Should we be falling in behind France as the new world leader? They have nukes, and they're not controlled by the Americans, unlike Britain's nukes. And they can come together for a day to make sure that their Nazis cannot sneak into power. I did enjoy that when France said, you know what, the Nazis look like they're going to take over control. Let's all come together and make sure they don't. And now
we'll vote for people we hate, so the ones we hate even more don't get in.
And now they've actually managed to have a 9-week court process to make sure that the Nazis can't get into power for another 3 years. I think it is. All right. After the signal debacle, isn't that fun? I'm now wondering what false flag operations the US is planning to legitimize their takeover of the Panama Canal in Greenland. For Greenland, I was thinking they'd go for a twofer and set it up so that Quebecois separatists carry out an attack on the US space base in Greenland so that they can take over Canada at the same time. Or am I just remembering an episode of Archer?
Well, I mean, even more horrifying. Just this week, the commander of that Space Force base in Greenland's
she got sacked.
She got sacked because
JD Vance was saying
JD Vance told some lies.
These people suck, and you all suck. And she's saying, no, we have to work with these people, including the Danes, the Canadians, and the Greenlanders on her base that she has to work with every day, saying, just because he's saying you all suck doesn't mean I think you suck and that you are not necessarily sucky people.
Anyway, the ostensible reason was her failure to support the Trump agenda. And I believe that no one has taken an oath to support the Trump agenda as opposed to the Constitution, which is being widely ignored. Anyway, moving on.
All right. But actually, the Senate Armed Service Committee has requested the Pentagon acting Inspector General, acting because Trump fired the Inspector General, and how long until the acting Inspector General gets fired, announced an inquiry into the signal debacle by Hegseth's office, probably not in response to somebody else's incompetence, but China has also said they will now more strictly regulate the publication of military-related information online, including weapon systems, facilities, and organizational structures, protecting China's military information from benefiting its adversaries and harming China. So no more posts on War Thunder. And let's say Australia has put out a similar communique recently about what gets published online. That's where I got this from. They're saying that other countries are doing it, so maybe we do it too, and maybe America should bloody learn from that. Saying,
look, one thing I would advise everyone watching the craziness that's unfolding in front of us is Donald Trump lies all the time, and he has all of his life. Also,
we're not even going to talk about the short selling and buying of stocks
or possibilities of that.
The insider trading that's going on right now that he's making bazillions from.
But there is also that hypernormalization is a thing, and you should watch the Adam Curtis documentary, which is on YouTube normally or Vimeo, about hypernormalization, which has been pioneered by the Putin regime, where you bombard the public with crazy stuff so fast that they can't respond to anything. Even Alistair Campbell on the Rest is Politics, which is the most terribly centrist thing going, looked at the tariffs on the McDonald Islands penguins and said, I think that's a distraction. and Alistair Campbell, bearing in mind, was Tony Blair's communications director, so he knows a bit about misdirection.
All right.
Yes.
What do we think about
the Torpedo IPA?
I really like this.
Well, as a 9% Imperial IPA, you know what? 9% Imperial IPAs taste awesome. When I worked in a brewery, there was a rule that the staff could not pour themselves in their after-work drinks more than not a pint, no pints of the strong beers. For a few years, they were allowed to pour themselves pints of the strong beers, and then there were too many vomiting incidents, and then there was no pints of the strong beers.
This is really nice. I got to say the KBR, the Founders KBR is...
Oh, that's a beer for the ages.
That is the beer for the ages. But...
KBS,
sorry. The Atomic Imperial IPA, this is very nice. And I could, again, follow the two KBSs with two of these, and your night is done. That is a good night.
Yeah. Anyway, it's actually...
and this one's available in Australia. Hey. That one may not be. And then after tariffs, who knows what's going to be available? Because I bought this one before tariffs, and in fact I bought it a number of months ago. But who knows what we'll be able to get in the future months with the tariffs now in Australia?
Now, just bringing my beer snob sensibilities to this. What they've done really well in this is not gone bonkers on the hops, which is too often what immature brewers do. And it is strong on the malt, but they have used the higher alcohol to absorb good but not overly bitter flavours from the hops. It's a very carefully constructed beer. That's
really nice. There we go. So we got two really good beers from today's, even when the Juno Juice was really nice
and the Mistral was good. It's just been a cavalcade of good beer. Yeah.
What are we going to come up with next time, John?
Our listeners in other countries need to start getting in touch to send the beer packages, guys. It's not compulsory, but Brandon's done it twice. Are you half the man that Brandon is? Just throwing that in there to think about.
Right.
Okay.
Australian Abrams heading to Ukraine, now supposedly stuck in Poland because of Putin's demands of Western countries to stop providing aid to Ukraine while peace talks.
I also believe that the US has withdrawn an enormous number of forces from Poland and that's part of why these Abrams have got stranded there.
Sorry, I wrote that first bit about 3 weeks ago when I first saw it, and now it's a case of, it's because the US has pulled out all the logistics support for the factories over in Poland that are the ones doing the deconditioning of the Abrams before they go into... So the 49...
And ours were export versions to begin with. They're making them even crappier for Ukraine. But
the 49 Australian Abrams that have been shipped over are sitting in Poland and may one day get snuck over to the border to Ukraine, but haven't heard anything in the last couple of weeks. Sorry, I'm sounding like RFK Jr. All right. Hopefully they'll get across there. It has been confirmed that they're actually sitting in Poland, so Stuff I wrote 3 weeks ago has been anyway.
So here we go. Anyway, in important news, as has been discussed in the comments by people who do not understand Australian politics, and look, I've got some sympathy for Americans who get upset when we talk about American politics, because listening to English people
as a comedian friend of mine said, an Australian public service servant in Canberra knows more about the by-elections in Kansas than the entirety of the American population knows about the Australian elections.
Look, I did love Gore Vidal famously said the problem with Australian politics is that most people outside of Australia never grasp more than the tip of the ice cube. And that was Gore Vidal. Yeah.
The fact that he even knew about Australia.
Yeah, but also
surprised.
He noted that our politics is an ice cube, but outside observers only understand the very tip of it. So
there are layers to that.
Yeah.
They're very small layers, but there are layers to that statement. That's really good.
Yeah. So anyway, we have an election coming up, and it's looking at this
in
point,
3 weeks. Now it's 2 weeks ago. But 2 weeks ago, they announced the election in 3 weeks.
We do have... It's funny because Peter Dutton, who is the Liberal Party, which is the Conservative, he's been trying to hang his fortunes on being, I'm going to be like Trump in Australia, and literally Liberal Party strategists, his party strategists are describing this as cancer. It's not happening. He's done. He could never count. Famously, he dragged his children to Canberra thinking he was going to become Prime Minister and had them in their Sunday best to go meet the Governor-General, and then he lost the vote because he can't count. He's very dumb. His family have been powerful in Queensland, doing horrible things to Aboriginal people for
he's a Brisbane buddy
hundreds of years. Yeah, but even before that, I mean, his great-grandfather did and was incredibly part of horrible things that happened in Queensland in the 1860s. Let's move on from that. But yeah.
So my personal hope is that I'm hoping the shit-light Labor Party get back in power, but as a minority government with the Greens. That way they either have to betray the people and work with the Conservatives to pass legislation, which they are more than happy to do, or actually do something good for Australia and its people. Labor should see it as an opportunity. They need to realise they're not going to get a third term. I mean, the powers that be are not going to let them have a third term and actually pass some legislation that is in their hearts and want to do, and then blame it on the Greens. So cancel AUKUS, because even
we're never going to see those submarines. Yeah.
No, look, even the Brits have bloody started up a investigation. Some sort of committee into is AUKUS actually going to happen just this week. Tax the overseas mining and fossil fuel companies and build Australian infrastructure and resilience rather than shipping all the money overseas and saying there's nothing left for hospitals, teachers, dental, housing, or even the useful parts of defence that doesn't include AUKUS. So maybe building a industry that builds 155 millimeter artillery rounds and ATACMS missiles. Sorry, the Australian versions of the ATACMS missiles that we're loading on the back of Bushmasters, Humvees, something like that, and basically building Australian defence resilience that doesn't include relying on the US, because we really need to start building some industry in Australia that doesn't rely on our defence being provided by the US. And let's face it, boys and girls, that might not be, because that's not going to be around after the next 5 years. Anyway, but keep going up. All right, it makes sense. However, an addendum looks now. As I said, I wrote that about 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks ago. It looks like the powers that be have realised that a Labor government now, minority government, is a real possibility in the last week or so, and the media has gone from being a 50-50 race for Labor winning, because they'd to a coalition government winning, to they'd rather have Labor winning as a majority government, because they do not want to have Labor winning with a minority government with the Greens, because they know that if they have a minority government, they can't control what happens, and so they want to make sure that Labor gets in, because they can control either coalition or Labor, but they can't do both.
Yeah, I've got 2 quick things to say on trade. I'll get them over quickly because we're totally tank, not totally trade. One of them is that because of the tariff flip-flops and the targeting of China, China has cancelled its LNG
liquid natural gas.
Yeah, liquid natural gas deals with the US, and there are ships in the middle of the Pacific Ocean turning around as we speak because of that. And Australia is now getting $1.5 billion a day in additional sales to China for LNG. Just this week.
Is any of that money actually coming to Australia? Oh, no, well, going to the multinationals.
No, you and I aren't getting any of that.
So the way Australian gas works is that we produce it, we sell it, we give it to the Japanese or American or Chinese companies, and then they take it for free. And they sell it on.
Let me get to my second point. When we talk about these trade deals, the whole of the rest of the world is furious right now because all of the global trade systems have been created for American convenience. No one else wanted them set up the way they were. This was all American, and now you're saying, oh, we don't like it. And it's like, this was your system. This was yours. For example, to have a free trade deal with America that Australia has, which has been completely ignored in Trump's hitting us with tariffs, we have to give intellectual property licensing deals to US companies, which are so mad that every profit they make, every cent of profit, gets converted into a intellectual property licensing fee, so they make exactly zero profits every year. They pull billions of dollars out of this country every year because they've got this get out of jail clause where they just put it back as an IP licensing fee. So American companies make fortunes in this country, pay no tax on it because of the system that Trump's dismantling. So hooray, Donald Trump. You're awesome. But and this is happening all over the world, and this is why people are furious about this. But we're not totally trade, so let's move on. We got more defense-related stuff to talk about.
Is it though? But anyway, okay. And it could even make all these sort of things could even make money for Australia because Europe wants green steel, aluminum, and nickel for their revamped defense industry. They've said, we can't rely on America either, and we need to start building up our defense industry. And we need aluminum, steel, and nickel. Australia has lots of all three of those, right? Lots and lots and lots and lots.
Well, we don't have green steel yet, but we've got everything we need to make it. So
yeah, I was about to say we've got, and they want to do it in a non-carbon way. Because I tell you what, for the middle of April,
it's very warm.
It's stinking hot. All right. Usually, I'm sitting here in shorts and t-shirt. I should be wearing jeans and a jumper because it's stinking hot here in Canberra.
I was barbecuing my courtyard last night. Going, I can't believe I'm here in a t-shirt.
We should. Canberra's not a warm place. We should be cold. We should be cold.
My Facebook memories show me that I was lighting fires 10 years ago, and I am not right now.
2 weeks or 3 weeks' time, we should be having snow here in Canberra, possibly. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like that. Anyway,
let's move on.
All right, Australia really needs to get in on that action, as we have lots of all three of that. And rather than giving to the China, US, and for free, we could even sell them our gas for their pig iron. Rather than giving it away to the Japanese, Chinese, and US to sell. Right.
Now, just quick, go on.
This one's yours.
Oh, yeah. There is another thing that in terms of what we need to make a modern industrial world, Japan, Taiwan, China make a lot of it. There's a few high-tech things like jet engines that they don't know how to make, but Britain knows how to make those. And Britain really needs some trading partners after Brexit. So there is a shape of a world where America is excluded, and hopefully America's not excluded. Hopefully America somehow comes to its senses and rejoins the world. But we can get by pretty well without dealing with this madness. Anyway. In related news, we have an article here. No, it's up on the screen right now. I got that right. Okay. More Americans, even per capita, want Canada to take over the US than Canadians want the US to take over Canada, which I found hilarious. But getting back to tanks, the MGCS has lurched back to life.
MGCS stands for?
The Main Ground Combat System, the European... when we first started putting these episodes onto YouTube, we had weird people who we didn't know suddenly started commenting saying, oh, you're not talking about the MGCS as the future of tanks, you're missing the point. And it's done nothing in the intervening years, but it's lurched back into life. A consortium which is going to involve KNDS, I'll tell you what that means, Deutschland KNDS, right?
KNDS France.
It's more than that, but Rheinmetall and Thales, And if you haven't been keeping up on the two companies, KNDS came out of the merger of the German Krauss-Maffei Wegmann, which makes the Leopard, and the French Nexter. And it has two versions, the German and the French version, and then they're both in this consortium. And it's now aiming to produce a tank for the 2040s, which is then going to give the Leopard 3 a decade in the field before they move to the MGCS, the Main Ground Combat System. And lots of online sources will mix up those initials, but it is MGCS, not MCGS. But everyone gets it wrong.
We are the men of the MCC. That's a goodies episode from the 1970s about cricket. And anyway.
So moving on. So what we're looking here for is a tank as part of, we always love this, a system of systems, which is a nice way to say that no one will understand it.
I think the goodies would do really well with that. Anyway, I want to give a shout out to Elliot Mitchum and who else have we got in here? That Blitteron. I don't think we've said hello to you guys yet. I don't remember that, and that might be because the two beers we've just had. But I want to say welcome, folks, and glad you joined the comments.
Okay. Now, getting back to the MGCS, Main Ground Combat System, Rheinmetall will remain competing against themselves and their own KF-51 Panther design, which they're developing with Italy's Leonardo. And Leonardo used to be Finmeccanica and OTO Malera and Augusta and Alenia. And Leonardo is also has a joint venture with Thales, which is also back in the MGCS system. And we would say that...
And we thought military nomenclature was difficult.
Yeah. And so none of this seems like a good way to develop tanks, particularly on the leisurely timescales that, I'll be pleasantly surprised if we all lived long enough to see anything delivered here.
I just like the episode of Military History Visualized or Non-Visualized came out today saying, 2025 is going to be the last summer of peace. I'm going, wow, that's...
Well, we're in peace in Ukraine right
now.
But
that's kind of scary. And it was going out today, I was going, that's a scary little concept of saying to my child that, in 18 months' time, it's all going to go bad.
She will be a vicious infantry soldier.
If she can get the dragons that she's always talking about, all right?
Yeah.
Dragons are where she's at.
Okay.
I agree with her, all right? Dragons are great.
Now, I think you need to hand me a beer. Now, just quickly, Taiwan has held exercises saying that they are aiming for a 2027 invasion by China. And China has also made it increasingly clear that their military build-up is aimed at culminating in 2027. And there is no way that Xi Jinping has been building and paying for these incredible expenditures in military forces without doing something with them.
Not to mention all the reports this week of all the cables being dragged up accidentally, undersea cables being dragged up accidentally all around Taiwan by Chinese captained ships.
Yeah.
Total coincidence. So that's what. With Trump in power, it's a case of it's not like he's going to do anything about it.
Well, this is the thing. It looks like 2027 is going to be the year that China moves on Taiwan, and it will be entirely possible that they...
Let's make sure we get rid of the Marines in Darwin by then, and the B-52s.
Yeah. So, but it looks incredibly likely that a deal agreement is done that America won't intervene at that point. But it might well be that Taiwan comes to a mutually amicable agreement.
I was about to say, it'd be nice if Trump actually did a real estate deal for Taiwan to China and said, how about you buy this Taiwan place? And they all spend lots of money, and suddenly China's in charge.
Yeah.
Out of the deal, boys and girls. It's real estate.
Yeah. So anyway, 2027, mark it in your calendars. That might well be when that goes down. And for the sake of everyone in Taiwan, and I've got a lot of Taiwanese friends, I'm just hoping whatever happens goes down reasonably peacefully. But frankly, watching world events happening right now, you'd rather hitch your wagon to China's star than America's star. So
all right, and bringing it back to tanks, David Wiley talks about the new exhibition at Bovington from Ukraine and his thoughts on how Europe needs to work together and figure out what things are needed in large numbers and what capabilities you can take your time on to produce the most advanced version of in 10 to 20 years, and how it's worthwhile holding onto your old kit for a rainy day. That was a good little video of him saying, look, Europe's really good at building stuff, and some of it you can do over 10 to 20 years and have really good technology and tanks and planes and everything else. But some of it you need to have now, or if something's going to kick off in 6 months' time, you need to have a capability that's is available. So that's whether that's a trained population who has been through military service and can be drafted in, rather than bring them in off the street having never done it before, or having lots of ammunition to be able to say, yep, we have an industry to be able to provide 155 artillery rounds right now, and we can gear them up and make sure they're there.
But it's the biggest problem with financially efficient corporate operations is that military operations
are not there to make a profit, right?
But also they require surplus capability.
Yeah,
but also health systems require surplus capability so your country can fight wars. You need empty beds in the wards in peacetime so that you can rehabilitate injured soldiers.
I always love the military logistics. It's all about, doesn't matter what it costs or how much you have. It's a case of you need to have it in the right place at the right time. So if you don't have it, you can't provide it. And whereas business logistics is all the case about reducing the bottom line to make sure you've only got the right amount at the minimum amount of time and effort. But the two are not mutually exclusive, but you need to recognize and make those choices rather than say, I only want to do this or I only want to do that, and say, no, I'm willing to take this risk and for this cost over this time. But
one of the most eye-opening books I ever read was, quoting off the top of my head, I think it's called British Naval Procurement 1921 to 1938, something like that. And it's a very obscure book, and I think to buy it new, it's not new because you have to buy it secondhand. It's like £140. It's an expensive book. But it was written by someone who had actually worked in the UK cabinet and researched this, and it was making the point that the efforts that Winston Churchill made as a minister in the interwar period to save Vickers, which Vickers could not exist as an industrial company in the peacetime environment.
Because remember, the British government wasn't buying from Vickers; they were buying from other companies.
But to fight World War II, they had to keep Vickers alive, and the lies that were told to the public, and the frankly treasonous actions taken by numerous people in government to preserve Vickers' industrial capability would come back to save the world, not too fine a point on it. So this stuff is complicated and difficult. But another thing was I got taken in, and it's up on the totallytank.net website, how I got taken in by an April Fool's prank.
I called it.
Yeah, Rob said, it's April Fool's. And it's like, oh, but it's April 3rd. And it's like, go back. Anyway.
We're in Australia. It's time delay.
Yeah, anyway, the point was that when you're actually fighting a war, and particularly when you're fighting a certain sort of war, assault guns are all that you need in terms of armoured fighting vehicles.
S-tanks.
But in peacetime, you build turreted tanks because you need something that's more versatile because you don't know what sort of thing you're doing in the future. And it was an interesting thing that it actually made sense, the April Fool's prank, that the Russians were about to build T-90 assault tanks because it would actually make sense for them in this current war for them to do that. So every good April Fool's has a kernel of truth, and that one got me. But anyway.
Just like the Chieftains.
Oh, yeah.
His was funny.
Yeah. Look, our one on the Furphy was the best, I reckon. But anyway.
I still remember that.
Yes.
Anyway, go back and enjoy it. But that's it, boys and girls.
Hey.
We hope you've enjoyed today's little...
Little.
It's not even 2 hours.
Feels like it.
That's the beers talking, all right? Mm-hmm. Very good beers. Thank you so much, Brandon. I want to thank all the people who commented. And how did we end up in the poll, John?
Oh, Very Tank-like is winning. Ha-ha! Ha-ha! Very Tank-like has won.
47% not a tank to very tank light at 53, and that's how you get the and the Electoral College says Trump won.
And that was one vote, one value. There's nothing wrong with that.
We were discussing in the pub the last weekend how we could not think of a better electoral system than what Australia has, and I'm really happy. I'm really proud and happy about that.
Preferential voting, compulsory voting. Just do it, everyone.
Yeah, on a Saturday. On a Saturday, not this bloody Tuesday rubbish or anything like that. Is the case that everybody has to vote. You go to your local school, you get a sausage sizzle and democracy sausage, and you vote. And everybody has to do it, and you don't have to vote for two parties. You can vote for 17 different parties, and eventually your vote will count. Somewhere along that path, your vote will count. And I think we're saying, I cannot think of a better electoral system. There's plenty of different, better governments and election processes and everything else, but an electoral system, Australia's got it pretty good, and I'm really proud of that.
Okay. Anyway, thank you, folks, for your kind words at the end of the episode. And look, we've had a lot of people watching this. We've got 14 people on right now, which is a lot for us. But anyway, it's been great. Hopefully, we haven't upset anyone else. And on that note, we are going to go have a wee. And
I just want to final thing. Yeah. Bradley, great piece of kit. Well done.
The Bradley infantry fighting vehicle.
Yes. And the CSV and the armoured fighting vehicle and the good piece of kit. I think it's saved a lot of American lives over time. As I said, I'm very surprised at why it was not sold more. But good thing. It's a good thing. So hopefully it won't invade us one day.
Yeah. All right.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Go Brumbies.
See ya.